and those, they all left and did their own shows. I mean, Doug Langdale was the guy who I think his first TV job was working for us in Darkwing Duck. In fact, in the first episode, Sinking Feeling, I think the boat is called the SS Langdale.
Mm.
Uh, Doug was a genius when it came to Megavolt. Um, I told the story a lot at the con, but to me, I'm always impressed with. I don't know how to get there from here. I said that to Carl Gears about Winnie the Pooh. He and Mark Zaslav really created the Pooh franchise and made him into a huge character because it wasn't from just those old half-hour featurettes. These guys, Carl went way over budget and took extra time on stuff and really made the show look as good as those old featurettes. And I think really made that into a character that rivaled Mickey in merchandising. Anyway, I always said, like, I could do a Pooh show. It wouldn't be that one. It's, I don't know how to get there from here. And I said the same thing to Doug's version of Megavolt, because there was one that sticks in my mind where Megavolt robs a jewelry store. Great, I would have that idea. But he doesn't rob jewelry, he robs the light bulbs.
Yeah.
I could even get there, but only Doug would have him run out with an armful of light bulbs and say, "Be free, my children!" And of course, they all break. That's he did. I mean, Doug went on to do Earthworm Jim,
Yeah.
and Dave the Barbarian, and you can see his his trademark and all. Right now, he's doing Puss in Boots for DreamWorks. Bob Squing and Mark McCorkle were on my later shows and became my partners on Buzz Lightyear Star Command, and they went on to create Kim Possible.
Yeah.
Talk about a great show.
Oh yeah.
And then went Penguins in Madagascar, and I think now they're working on Big Hero 6.
Oh, wonderful, wonderful. Yeah. So
I don't know if that's a
I hope it wasn't a secret. You heard it here first.
Oh, actually, it would be more exciting if you bleeped it.
Yeah.
Now they're working on beep.
Yeah.
What did he say? What did he say?
So now you didn't actually work on the Aladdin television show, did you? It was just a two.
No, that was the show.
That was okay. Awesome. Yeah. So
I was the one, who, for better or worse, started the whole direct-to-video thing. In that we always introduced our shows with like a multi-parter that could be run vertically, meaning if you do 4 episodes, you run it from starting at 7 in the evening to, so it's a 2-hour movie, and then it would start the following Monday. So that was what you did for the syndication market. I called up home video because I had met some of their middle management guys. I said, by definition, I'm doing the sequel to Aladdin. Are you guys interested in releasing that? And actually the answer was no. I mean, it didn't get anywhere. It wasn't like this genius of saying, oh, this will make so much money for the company. It was, if we can bring in one more source of revenue for our projects, maybe our budgets we can get a little more money, or they at least won't go down.
Sure.
Because we were always fighting the budget on these things. Then they released Aladdin on video. It did huge. And I went ahead and made the call again, and this time they were way more open to it.
Yeah.
And then later on, we got a lot of notes from the boss, meaning Gary Kreisel, and I said, okay, we can do these notes. I said, okay, but we have to do these by this date. And he goes, why? Because if we do it by that date, home video can release it as, before the series. And this was actually pointed out to me after the meeting, that he had said, don't worry about that. If that happens, it's gravy. But he left, and I said, we got to do all the notes, but we still have to hit that date.
Yeah.
And Return of Jafar, which, from my way of thinking, is not a very good movie. First half's pretty good. It went on and made something $180 to $200 million domestic, and much bigger around the world. And that was made for like $3 million. As it's been pointed out painfully, had I done that with a live action franchise, meaning here's a successful franchise, they did all the creative work, but you did this kind of crap knockoff, but it still made that much money, I would have new cars in the driveway and buy a picture deal and all that. But in animation, it's like, not so much. I feel much better about our second one, technically the third one, Aladdin is the King of Thieves.
Yeah.
And that I just felt we were more, more in sync. But after that, the home videos became better and better, better technically in that they started looking easily as good as what Disney feature animation was around the period of Little Mermaid. I mean, our Australian studio in Sydney just did fantastic work. I worked with them a little bit on my various shows. Um, but after the King of Thieves, I did a little development, and then I said, I, these things go on forever. You don't have as much control of the story, and just my temperament was more about I rather tell a lot of stories than one story
Right.
because if I mess up the one story, it doesn't feel good. you know? Whereas if I'm messing up half dozen out of 65, I can live with that. Uh, anyway, it was funny. I went back to the head of production. I said, "Any chance? Is there any like television series project I could do?" And they had just been saying the day before, who would be perfect on this project is Tad, but we can't dare bring it up to him. We have our heads. I don't know where they got that, but so it was like here I am walking in the next day, and that was Hercules,
Mm.
which is like doing a superhero movie again, basically. Uh, the only thing that, again, by Ron and John, the only thing that drove them nuts is that they found out we were doing the teenage years, and they felt like this movie is perfect for TV because we're basically setting up Superman, and now you can do the adventures of Superman. But again, we steered a different way and we're giving notes of a different way. And it was like, no, we're doing the teenage
Yeah.
years,
Yeah. It worked. It
which
worked well.
it was Mark and Bob. I almost think in a lot of ways it's one of the most beautiful shows we did. And Mark and Bob just fantastic running the writing of that. They were, they would find out who's going to be cast in a certain role, whether it's Jennifer Aniston or James Woods or whoever we have, and then they would rewrite lines to fit the sound of their voice and whatever humor they had, get the most out of. They did a fantastic job on that.
Absolutely, yeah. And I mean, I will just say, I liked Return of Jafar. I mean, I liked all the
Oh,
Aladdin
that's good.
movies. My wife and I, we love them so much. Our first child, her name is Jasmine, so we're pretty big fans of the Aladdin
Okay,
franchise. So,
as
uh,
long as she didn't name her Jafar, I guess we're good. Or
my
Abdel.
son acts like Jafar sometimes, so he worries us, but we'll
There you
deal with
go.
that later.
Better that than Gosselin, because then you'd have a handful.
Yeah, well, I'm not too sure you're very far off from her being Goslin. I don't think I should let her watch Darkwing that much more.
There you go. Role model.
Yeah, I guess you could look at it that way. Well, so how did you go from now? Obviously, you love comic books. I mean, talking to you, you brought it up multiple times, and then you did the Hellboy animated series, and I love Hellboy.
Yeah,
I
I
covered
actually
that.
I actually pitched that at Disney because I wanted to. Hellboy came out. Mike's just wrapped it up after 22 years. I think Darkwing came out in like 91. I think Hellboy came out in 92, somewhere around there.
Right.
Anyway, I thought it was fantastic, and the idea of, you know, what I did a little sizzle pitch for it, and the tagline was "The Lord works in mysterious ways," and that here's a guy who looks like a bad guy, looks like a demon, and he's actually on the side of good.
Hmm.
I love the idea of doing an animated X Files,
Yeah.
the adventures of BPRD, um, as they investigate different things. It'd be fantastic. We actually were in talks with. So anyway, it's good it didn't go at Disney because I don't know, maybe it'd be called Heck Boy, and I have a hard. There is something. The idea of walking down Main Street and seeing Hellboy with his big stone arm around Minnie Mouse or something. It was just
Yeah.
weird, but memorable. Uh, anyway, I was ushered out of Disney in 2003 and did random projects. Worked with Stan Winston on a robot project. Did little pilots and stuff like that around town. Uh, um, did a direct-to-video on Brer Rabbit for Universal. Um, but I had worked with Mike on Atlantis because Team Atlantis was going to be an ongoing series,
Yeah.
and that was the one the crew thought was going to be. They started talking about the scripts, and they said, which is rare anyway, and they said this is going to be the best thing this place has ever done. Everybody was really excited because it was basically. I said, well, I'm never going to get to do Hellboy, so we're going to make Atlantis that, and it was really, you know, especially at the start, really, really cool. Writing was on the wall kind of when we thought it was going to be on Toon Disney, which was a new channel. Uh, and when we found out it was going to be on Saturday morning, because at that point it was called One Saturday Morning, it was kind of like hearing the death toll already. I mean, the tolling of the bell, the
Yeah.
scene of a graveyard, because it was like, wait a minute, that doesn't fit there at all. And ABC really, it was kind of forced on them because by that time Disney owned ABC. Um, but then the movie came out, didn't do well the first weekend, and that was it. That was their excuse to scrap everything. And luckily we had like 4 episodes or whatever in partial production, so we were given permission to do some extra footage to tie together the first 3 episodes. Now, what management didn't expect us to do is create 15 minutes of extra footage because that was very expensive, but you know, it salvaged a lot of what we wanted to do. Um, but that gave, you know, I got to work with Mike on that because Mike designed a lot of our monsters and got his sensibilities. Um, but then, you know, I actually went to Cartoon Network to interview about Bone, the comic, about
Oh.
doing a series on that. Um, and it was, I forget the name of the executive, but he was not in the room. He was in Atlanta. I'm talking to um, Sam Register, actually, who's now at Warner Brothers, who at the time, who was the big Hellboy fan. And anyway, it was the other executive who said, well, Tad actually has been, you know, working with Mike Mignola on, has done some Hellboy scripts because I had done 2 half-hour scripts just as a showpiece working with Mike. And the guy instantly perked up because Hellboy was his, um, as far as he was concerned. And right now, and what it was supposed to be is actually a series on Cartoon Network, um, but all the players couldn't agree on the deal.
Mm.
So Mike and I didn't know this at the time because we would have been devastated. But I remember we were at San Diego Comic-Con when we got the word that the series is dead, but we're going to do a series of DVDs. So that was weird because Mike and I had said, okay, we're going to do this many Liz-centric shows, and this many Lobster Johnson shows, and this, we kind of had
Yeah.
all sorts of story ideas and stuff like that. So it was like weird kind of giving all that up, but then saying, here's this great opportunity of doing a series of movies. Um, so anyway, that was when it came together. I already knew 4 of the 5 parties, and the 5th party said, "Who's this Tad Stones guy?" You know, and a couple of weeks later, I was working for him. Uh, those were great. I mean, I just wanted to do the supernatural again. They were very tight budgets. They overlapped. There wasn't a lot of learning curve to them. Um, you know, because we're writing. The first one was kind of like um, Mike's short stories, and we actually adapted Heads, one of his short stories. And then the next one was Hellboy's Central European roots of vampires and the devil and all of that. Uh, and then they said, we need you to do this Turok, Son of Stone movie, and meanwhile you can write the movie, the third Hellboy, and then after Turok you'll do the Hellboy. And the third movie, then we had the advantage of we know what works best
Yeah.
and what doesn't. And it had Lobster Johnson, it had cybernetic apes, floating heads in jars, Nazi surrogates if they weren't actually Nazis, the origin of Hellboy, slightly told in a slightly different way. And it was fantastic. And we were just so looking ahead to that. And then the company sold to Stars, and Stars said, we don't want to put money into our own projects. We'll take on other projects. So there went that. So at least I got a chance to do those two, and that was just fantastic. You know, usually you don't get to play with supernatural stories in animation, in American TV anyway.
Sure.
Supernatural stories in a serious way. I always said the difference between Hellboy and Scooby-Doo is Scooby-Doo tells you that it's a haunted house, between Shaggy and Scooby. Whereas, like a live action film, we want you to discover it along with the characters.
Sure.
And that was, I have some favorite sequences in both those films.
Yeah, well, before we get into that, let's take just a quick break, and we'll
Sure.
come right back and we'll talk a little bit more about it.
Sure. This is Tad Stones, the creator of Darkwing Duck, and I say, dude, remember this?
Hey guys, guess what? We are so sorry to interrupt this amazing episode with Tad Stones. I know you want to hear it. I know you want to hear it more, but wait one moment because we got this week's sponsor to get through. So shut your faces and listen up, because this week we're sponsored by Yamura. I said it right. I didn't just
Yamura.
You got that right, Yamura.
Yeah.
It is a
Sound
novel
it out.
written by Jason Doyle that you need to just listen to the rest of this and then go read it and then tell us what you think about the reading that you just did with your eyeballs. Tell us what it's like. So it's Yamura. It's about a guy named Jake, not me, a different guy named Jake, in a little Indiana town, different Indiana town, not this Indiana town. A lot of coincidences going on here. Jason Doyle, you might be in love with me. I think so. Here's the facts, okay? There's a guy named Jake. There's a lot of stuff going on, creatures and whatnot. He's not sure what's going to happen. It's going to get crazy. There's some cool art. There's the covers done by a cool artist that Jason Doyle says is good. So y'all just need to look at it with your eyeballs. Enough about this. Once you're done going Lulu or Amazon or iBookstore, you just look for Yamura. That's Yamura. Or just look for Jason Doyle.
Doyle rules.
Now back to Tad Stones. Bye-bye.
All right, excellent. We're back. So talk to us a little bit about after Hellboy, because I know, like you're saying, that even the comic book series itself, he just ended that, and I think I heard he wanted to work on watercolors now or something. He's going a completely new direction. Do you know anything about that?
Well, Mike's always, he's wanted to take a year off and, just to paint, to create things that don't have a story connected with it. Now, when he sent Hellboy to Hell, it was originally designed to be just an excuse to draw anything he wanted. So his painting is going to look a lot like his comics. But the idea was, originally Hellboy was just supposed to wander from town to town and get involved in another story. Frankly, a lot of what our original series pitch would be like. And then suddenly, Mike writes in a very intuitive way, and some of his art comes that way too. And he just, this sounds cool. And then 3 issues later, he goes, oh, that's why he said that, because his brain's been working to create something. Well, with Hellboy in Hell, a lot of the imagery is going to be what he's painting, but story-wise, instead of these lighthearted, or not necessarily lighthearted, but these random stories, he kind of put in that he killed Satan. Spoilers. So it's kind of like, that's kind of a big deal. And then, it just steered to where he wanted to wrap it up. Not to say he can't come back to it, because Mike has always jumped around in time. And in fact, there's a lot of fans who've been fans since the very beginning who would love to just see Hellboy doing stuff with the BPRD like he did in those first stories, which is closer to a normal, superhero comic. But I think Mike created something fantastic and something really special, and now he's just going to explore painting. What he has said on Facebook is, well, I'm sure glad I told the world that I was taking a year off painting, because I've done too, and if it wasn't for all that, I might go, yeah, maybe I'd go back to comics.
Yeah, now he has to. Now, what about you? I mean, do you have any plans? I know you talk a lot with Aaron Sparrow and those guys, but do you have any plans to write your own comic books or get into that, really?
Yeah, actually, I've got one on the screen right next to you.
Which side is it on? I want to read some of it.
Sorry. I mean, what happens is, let's put it this way. Remember way back after Darkwing Duck, I wanted to do a science fiction show.
Right.
It's not that one, but that was another side that I want to tell science fiction stories. Hellboy let me do supernatural stories, although I have this other idea that's more lighthearted that would have covered that ground too. But I have series that I pitched that I'm very excited about that nobody bought, or somebody was kind of interested in, but they wanted me to do a lot more, and now it's, basically got to the point where I think I'm retired. I put in for pensions and all that. I could still do. I have a Netflix series coming out in September that is not mine in the same way as a Disney show is mine, but I was director on it and the showrunner on it. That could feasibly do a second season, but they won't know until it's on the air. It's on the air in September, and even then, it's
Can you
like
talk anything about that, or do we still have to wait?
it's called Kulapari, An Army of Frogs. It is based on 3 books by Trevor Price, who's an ex-NFL player, was in the Super Bowl twice. So it's this fantasy series that he's done. I worked with his co-writer, in fact, was the writer of the scripts, and I, wrote things too and edited. It is just this bizarre mix of, you think, oh, this is going to be a Disney adventure. Oh my God, they're killing people. It kind of gets dark and it goes in different ways. It's just a unique mix. And I worked with a studio cartoon, Conrad, in Nova Scotia, and they just killed themselves on this thing. It looks fantastic. They use a lot of flash animation, a lot of traditional 2D animation, all sorts of After Effects. So it has its own unique look, but there's literally scenes of battle where there's 200 characters on the screen or more. That's just jaw-dropping, when you see it. Anyway, so that's coming out September 2nd, I think, on Netflix. If you go to my Facebook page, actually, I just changed it. Usually when I have the banner at the top, it's a scene out of that show. But I guess you can't really scroll back to previous banners. Maybe you can if you scroll far enough.
Now, are you guys worried about
the still images really have a feature look to them?
Yeah, are you guys worried about everything you're going to be up against in September now that Disney?
No, because again, it's not the same as I created the character. I'm working in another person's world, and even though I did a lot of the writing, I'm still following the map that was in the books. So it's not that same. I'm proud of the work, but it's not that same feeling of ownership.
Sure.
So, and again, it's kind of like if they came back to me to say, we need a second season. And it's like, yeah, but I'm having fun doing all this other stuff now. It may be that, we'll see if we're so lucky that they want a second season. But, maybe I would just, because if we ran out of books, maybe I would map out a season a la Greg Weisman on Gargoyles, A Young Justice, where everything, or Game of Thrones, where everything is interwoven, and
Yes.
and you split up characters, they have different adventures, and then you bring them back together and stuff like that.
Awesome.
That would be a huge, job in itself. Then let somebody else do the actual production side. I don't know. Like I say, it's let's see what happens. It's a pretty amazing show. It doesn't feel like any other show, certainly that I've worked on, but any other show that I've seen. I would think, again, somebody new to it would come and could binge through the 13 episodes, and they could tell me, oh, it was like this, or like nothing.
Yeah.
Anyway, Kulapari, Kulipari. If you Google it, you'll actually see some animation examples on the net. Those aren't ours. That was the designer of the book. Trevor hired him to put together an animation team to help promote the books. I don't know when Netflix would start putting together trailers, or even if they do that sort of thing when it comes to kid shows.
Yeah, I'm not sure if they do or not.
They do it for Daredevil, Jessica Jones, and all that, but I've never seen them for an animated thing.
Yeah. Have you watched any of Daredevil or Jessica Jones?
Oh yeah.
What do you think?
I think that's fantastic.
Oh, absolutely.
The Marvel Cinematic Universe has, it's doing great. There's some weaker ones, but they are doing the thing intentionally where all the movies feel different.
Yeah.
Yes, Winter Soldier is a spy story. Ant-Man, love that film, is a much smaller heist.
Yeah.
And
Very small.
Then the Hell's Kitchen street stories of the series are, a whole different thing. It would be weird to see them cross over, yet they could.
Sure.
But I think they're developing their almost a whole separate universe there.
Yeah.
Uh,
If they gave you the option, if they said you personally can grab anyone out of their universe and do an animated series based off that, who would you choose?
you know what? I'd say talk to the next guy, because really at this point, what I loved is is the storytelling, and at this point, I'm having more fun taking an old series idea and turning it into a graphic novel,
Yeah.
where I'm not getting notes, that I get to choose the personalities or how action oriented it is and all that. The only weird thing about it is when it comes to action scenes, you have to think of a comic action scene in a different way as an animation scene, or even individual gags. You'd say, oh, I can see how a character would play it out. And it's like, yeah, but he's not moving.
Mm-hmm.
And, action scenes sequences can be really boring in comics. They can be cool drawing that you appreciate them on that. But, especially with a comic, I am doing a comedy adventure. To kind of keep the humor going, it's like it can be a thickness of a pen line that makes a gag work or not. So
Yeah.
I just love the comics medium. I think it's unique in how it tells a story and what you can do on a page. I learned so much from Mike Mignola about how he lays on a page and how much is intentional and how much he realizes after the fact of what he's done, and that he then accents in coloring. I just think, there's things that you do in comics that you can't do in any other medium.
Oh,
Like
absolutely.
having Spider-Man can make 3 quips while he's punching a guy
Yeah.
once.
Yeah.
It's like there's no way to do that.
Right.
You do
Exactly.
bullet time, and with the Wachowski brothers, Um,
Yeah.
anyway, so I'm most excited. If someone said, and that was the last show I pitched it before, and I'm always noodle with it, but that was the last show I pitched, and I just realized, yeah, I could still. I was talking to Amazon about it, for instance, but it was like, Amazon's development time can be like 2 years long. So it's like, I just turned 64. I'm going to wait 2 years just to start it, to then, that's, what am I doing in the meantime? It doesn't sound like fun at all. And other people are weighing in on it. And I just rather get started now. And Friday night actually was the first night that I finally said, okay, I got all this paperwork stuff aside, I'm going to start on the story. And it was great, because it's like writing an animated adventure. In tone, there's a lot of similarities to Darkwing, but it is a science fiction thing. But I think it's a little more adventure than that is. So I'm really going to, let it find itself, although I know where I want the story to go and all that. And a lot of that came from episode pitches that I had for the series. So,
Is it going to be focused mostly for younger readers, or is it going to be mostly? What?
It would be pretty much like Darkwing.
Okay.
When you look at the thing, it's not. I'm not like, you can give it to any kid, and I would think an adult can enjoy it too.
Perfect.
One thing doing all that original art for MomoCon was made me way more confident about using a brush to work traditionally. So ideally, if I fork out the cash to get a high-end printer that can print large sheets, my thought is to, I have several friends who work this way, rough it out on a Cintiq digitally and do all the boring panel borders and things like that, and then print it out non-photo blue and then ink on top of that. So you end up with something that feels hand done, and then go back to digital for your lettering. It feels hand done, and you have a piece you can sell later on.
Yeah.
But my problem with the computer, I used to say the undo button is my best friend, and it's your worst enemy. It's like, if you're trying to move ahead, Jack Kirby once said, throw away your erasers. if you want to work in comics, because
Gotta
you
be
have to be
confident.
fast. Just put it down and move forward.
Yeah.
And it's kind of that way with digitally. It's more like, no, I can rough and change things a lot there, but if I was inking there too, I would just be trying to get a line too perfect. Uh, Mike Mignola can draw a page like 3 times and be pissed at himself the whole time. Uh, he will. He was talking about drawing a cat, and he spent the better part of a day trying to get the whiskers in the right place. And he says it's like a sickness, because then when he goes back to ink, he tries inking as fast as he can to keep the freshness to it, and the ink never ends up on those pencil
Right.
lines exactly. So it's like, he knows this is crazy. Maybe that's why he's taking a year off.
Yeah.
And that's kind of that spontaneity is what I want to hang on to. So
Yeah, I mean, it's a blast doing that. Right now, I actually just started. I'll plug myself here, but I just started writing my first graphic novel, and I've been planning it for probably 2, 3 years. I finally have an artist set up, a friend of mine in Arizona, and finally started sending him over some stuff, and just sitting down and actually starting to put everything together and seeing what's been in your mind come out onto
yeah,
paper. It's there's no, and I work a full-time job. I'm working 50 hours a week, and we're also doing this, and then I'm staying up till 3 o'clock in the morning writing the graphic novel, and I'm dog tired, but I'm so happy and excited that it's
yeah.
happening. It's a blast.
No, exactly. That's what I mean. I've been very lucky in my career in that, when your hobby is your job, then it's like you never work a day. I remember working, but still, it was like, that is, I've been very lucky about the creative side of things I get to do. What I loved about animation is working with a crew of people who are way more talented than I am in their individual jobs. But I know enough to be dangerous, is what I would tell people. So I can work with a background painter and give them real notes and things that I've learned from other background painters, or things that I just say, now I know enough the way I want to tell it. Then, but what that is kind of a lack of confidence in my own stuff. It's like, yes, thank goodness I have Greg Gullard to do my designs, and Kevin Hops and Doug Langdale and Bob Schooling and Mark McCorkle to write this, edit the stories for me.
Right.
And this great team, Paul Felix, who was doing layouts on Darkwing Duck, went over to features, and he has been their top, or one of their top VizDev, visual development artists on feature films since Tarzan. He does incredible work, and it's like, yeah, I got to work with him. And now it's just kind of like, it was back in Inktober. I don't know if you're aware of that, where artists will say, I'm going to make an ink drawing and post it every day of October. Started by Jake Parker, called Inktober. It's caught on. That forced me to start working with ink at all. But it was really this Momocon thing where I was saying, okay, now I'm going to do brush. That's even scarier. And I was starting to like what I saw myself doing, which is way rare for me. And that it was like, yeah, I can see, let's push myself farther to create, pages of this stuff. So I'm far away from there. I'm at the part I'm very confident in, it's saying, I'm going to tell the stories, and it'll just be a matter of, I know what kind of gag I need here. Can I make it funnier? Is this working enough? And putting in the poignancy where I want it, so that you, even when you have the fun of the characters like Goslin or Calvin, out of Calvin and Hobbes, to get those really heart moments out of those characters, so you don't hate them.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what I'm striving for. And then it's like, I got this bigger arc that I can tell, and I realized, oh, right here is a great single graphic novel, and this one, oh, that's another arc. And if I survive that much, then I'm sure I can come up with more.
Yeah. What's your writing process like? I mean, to sit down and actually start putting stuff together, is it something to where you have to just block everything out and you just go in your office and just write, or does it as it
Well,
comes?
I mean, again, when you talk about comics, I've written some comics. I did a Darkwing Duck short story, and back when Boom, it's still in the new giant size comics Darkwing Compendium or Omnibus, whatever Joe Books calls it. It's in there, although they got my credit wrong,
Oh.
which we always correct when we're autographing them. Anyway, it was, again, playing with the medium. I wanted to do a time travel story where pages 3 and 7 were exactly the same, except like Bill and Ted's Excellent Adventure, because you're at a different part of the time travel story, it has a different meaning to you.
Yeah.
Only a couple of the panels were different. It was very ambitious. It was very ambitious for an 8-pager, and what got back to me is people were confused the first time through and then loved it the second time they read it. And what a lot of people did say is like, oh, that felt like the show, because again, it was a Goslin-centric episode because she was the one traveling in time. So anyway, my process, this is a little weird what I'm doing now. I use a program called Scrivener, largely because it's made to collect ideas and put things in folders and stuff like that. But what I love about it is it allows you to literally look at index cards, which I'm used to from back in my animation days, where you pin them up on the wall. And so I basically map out, these are the main beats, of the story. I know he's going to be leaving home. He's going to be, they're going to get lost. The ship's going to crash. Whatever those main beats are. But then going into those, I can put more index cards that say, okay, what are the gag things I get out of that? What's the adventure stuff I get out of it? So really, kind of map it out as if it was more. I haven't done any pages yet, but my sensibility is it'll be somewhere between a comic and as if you told a comic story in the newspaper comic strips, and that there may be just kind of self-contained gags that you could put as a comic strip, but it also connects right to the next one, so that there is a flow to the story. So when it comes down to actually figuring out what's on the page, I have to be very aware of literally how fast am I spending too much time on jokes. They're funny jokes, but gee, I gotta make sure I have something on the left page that makes you want to turn the page onto the next thing. So it's a little different when you're writing for yourself. I could stop at that point, but I really want to map out, the individual gags, and then of course I would thumbnail the whole thing, and after that, we'll see. I'm supposed to draw it, so.
Yeah. Excellent. All right. Well, another question I have for you is, this is, of course, a podcast about our childhood. Dude, remember this, where we're...
I wasn't there.
Yeah.
I wasn't there. I know you guys had major childhood. That wasn't me outside the window.
No, that was, you were there. You were there. In one way or another.
Side notes, wash the underoos.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, but I just wanted to ask you, what's one thing of your childhood that you really miss?
Well, I kind of brought it with me. That's why you have it as part of yours. I mean,
good answer.
I mean, comics and I was there at the beginning of Marvel Comics. I just recently put up my collection for sale and on consignment, and sadly, I mean, they were like the first Marvel Comics. I had a complete set of Iron Man and early Fantastic Fours and Spider-Man and all that. But he goes, well, these are reader copies. And it's like, yeah, because I read the comics.
Yeah.
It wasn't about collecting and keeping them pristine. I never folded them up and put them in the back pocket, but I read them a lot and drew from them and traced them and, did all sorts of things. That was back in the days, long gone, where you would go to every used bookstore that you could find because there was generally a big box of comics that you got for a nickel. I got 2 copies of Avengers #1 for a nickel each.
Whoa.
That doesn't exist anymore, and that was like the fun of the hunt. And now to me, it's like, if you want to build the collection, it just takes cash, and where's the fun of that?
Yeah.
Because now the more collections they do and getting things digitally, then it's all about the stories. It's not about the thing.
Exactly. Yeah, I mean, and that's the thing with me, is that I really missed out on that whole, the hunt, the collection. I wanted to always collect comics growing up, but it just wasn't feasible for us at the time, living in a rural area, and and we rarely even went into town. I grew up in the country. We rarely went to town. So I always wanted to, and then whenever we had my son, I've said it before on the podcast, I use him completely as an excuse and thought, well, he's going to want to read comics one day. I might as well start collecting and reading them. So unfortunately, I missed out on that, but it's great hearing stories from people that have that stuff. And I would say
Yeah,
if you're selling...
my oldest son was at the perfect age for me to buy all the Star Wars toys when they came out.
Exactly, yeah. I with the new Ninja Turtles movies coming out and everything, and my son being into it, it's like, well, I have to take him to watch the new Ninja Turtles movie.
Of course.
Which I've heard great things about the new one, the second one. I heard it makes the first one look horrible, so I'm excited to see it.
Cool.
Yeah, so, well, I know you're working on the graphic novels. Is there anything else that you're working on that's we should be watching?
Well, that's the more exciting thing. I mean, again, the MomoCon was the first convention to invite me as an official guest, but now it's, it did go well. It was fantastic. So it looks like down in December I'll be in, at a con in Florida, which I'll wait for them to announce. Long Beach has offered me a table down there, which is a con I can drive to. So people say, oh, come do a con near me. And it's like, okay, what I'm doing right now is kind of feeling things out. I really want to work on creative projects. I have just life things to kind of figure out too. I'm promising my wife a trip to Europe to look up our genealogy stuff for
cool
8 years, so maybe we ought to do that finally. But it's to do that stuff, and I don't want to sit around. I'm not going to conventions to sell anything yet. So it's kind of like, hey, if this convention wants to invite me and it's okay weather, not that you see anything outside of the con, if it didn't cost me anything to go there, then sure, I'll do some original art and interact with the fans. It's a lot of fun. Once I have a book, then I would be more judicious about, okay, here's the 4 corners of the United States. I want to hit there and there and there,
yeah.
And hit major things, which if you can't get invited, then you got to, buy a table and take part of the crazy lottery that is the larger conventions these days. But who knows? I mean, I have one publisher that has said, anything you do, show it to us first. We want to see it. But it's in a luxurious place where I can actually do the thing and then show them. It's not like, I have a friend, Chris Schweitzer, who does fantastic historically based comics. Krogan's Adventure is one to look up. He's done a book series called The Creeps, which is about these little kids who are fighting monsters in their town and, not getting credit for saving the universe kind of over and over again.
Right.
And he does these fantastic things, but he's where I was when pitching a show. When pitching a show is you're trying to do the least amount to sell the show, because that's all the stuff you're doing for free. So usually when you're pitching a series to a publisher, especially an original series, you have to put across why they should publish it, what the characters are like, what's the interaction, what are the stories, why will people want to buy it, what's your unique point of view, and yet do that as efficiently as possible to sell it, because you're not getting paid for that. I have the luxury of not worrying about that, so I can just do pages after page, and at a certain point I can say, oh, I'll show this around at this point, or maybe I'll wait till it's finished. If publishers don't want it, we live in an age where I can put it on iBooks, I can put it on Kindle. The last project I did was writing a pitch based on a series in Kindle that did fantastic, and the guy was just publishing on Kindle, and then a publisher said, look at all these people who are buying your thing, we'll publish softcover books of those. Mm-hmm. So it's like, I can still get my stories out there.
Yeah.
If nobody's reading them, then there'll probably be less of a reason to do them. But, if you're getting any feedback at all, it's like, yeah, why not do it? Or you can, these days, again, tons of friends who publish a hardcover book of their own stuff or a sketchbook for their stuff. They get it printed overseas and they show up at a convention and they sell it for way over what it costs to print. and that's cool. That's enough. So I'm not worried so much about that part because the joy is in the creation.
Absolutely.
It always has been coming up with those characters. And when you're first coming up with a series, you have a rough idea of what you want to do with the characters and how they're going to talk. And in this case, I have 3 characters who, at least this point, don't talk. So is that going to be too much of a challenge, or how do I really make them distinctive constantly without having them talk? But as you then start doing scenes and characters interact, they become real. In animation, you hit that point, and then when the show gets cast, it's at a new level. Then it becomes much easier because you actually are saying, "Oh, I'm writing for that guy," as opposed to the guy who's roaming around in there. So I'm hitting just the start of that. I guess this is my way of telling the world that this is what I'm going to be doing for a year.
Now you have to.
But yeah, kind of. But I mean, this is, I want to do creative stuff. That's what if I didn't have a project like this, then I would be, hitting the streets saying like, please hire me, just not to keep money coming in, just to be able to create something. I was on Bob's Burgers for like 3 to 4 years, and what was fantastic, the show is hilarious.
Right.
What drove me crazy is that I was a storyboard artist, and it's not a show that you can even add a gag to. It's very much a writer-driven show, and not a lot of animation to it, on purpose as a sense of style. And sometimes my animatics would have more poses than they would in the final show. Especially I had a scene where Bob was drunk in the kitchen, and I had him weaving all over, still using the kind of like the flash shapes or whatever. But they had to pull all sorts of drawings out of it to get it back to so it looked like the same show. But it did, I drove my director crazy too, where it's just like it was getting to me that I was part of this amazing show, this hilarious show, but I was, for me anyway, I wasn't, getting that sense of creation that, the character creation and all that I love so much. So that's what that's the thrill I'm getting right now. And it's cool because at the same time I have to develop it visually, which is nice because I'll tend to write in the first part of the day when I'm fresher, and then like in the evenings or something, I can draw with a movie on the screen, or Netflix or something like that. And the only downside of that is I'm in this chair way too much.
Yeah.
Which is not a good thing to do as you're getting older. So.
Yeah, but I think, people that don't have that creative mindset, they don't understand that if you're not getting these things out of your mind will explode.
I just heard it. I was right there. I saw everything shake.
See? Good special effects, see? Well, unless you have anything else, I think that's it. Okay, awesome. Well,
thanks for having me on. Good luck with the podcast.
Thanks for coming on. I mean, this has been awesome for us to be able to talk with you, and comics is a passion of mine, so getting into that with you, was unexpected and fun. So,
all right.
We'll stick around for a moment. We'll talk to you a little bit more, but we're gonna go ahead and end the podcast for now. So, thank you everybody for tuning in this time. And I believe the next interview we have set up right now is with Mike Drucker. He is a stand-up comedian, very funny man. He's on Twitter. He's always cracking me up on with his tweets. He's worked for Nintendo. He's worked for IGN. He's worked for Saturday Night Live, and he's currently writing for the Jimmy Fallon Show. He's hilarious, and I did tell him that if he doesn't make you guys laugh, that he has to refund everybody's money for the free podcast. So just get a hold of him for that. So thank you very much for tuning in. This has been Dude Remember This.
a little secret.